Live from their home studios, please welcome the hosts of DevCentral Connects, Boo Lamb and Jason Rom.
Hey everyone, welcome to DevCentral Connects. We are excited today to talk to you about what your home lab looks like, and Boo and I are going to talk about that, and not just what it looks like today, but what it's looked like over the years. And so we are excited about that. I'm going to bring my co-host on right now. And Boo, how are you?
I am good, Jason. How are you doing?
I am doing quite well, and I'm really excited to have this conversation because I have a fun story from the late 1990s and and early 2000s, dating back to my hardcore Cisco guy years, and so this will be a lot of fun. But before we get to that, I have a question for you.
All right.
And my question is, I'll quote my 3-year-old. He's like, I have a question, and my question is, and so yeah. Anyway, my question is, what is the best gift that you got as a kid for Christmas?
Oh wow, that is a great question. Let me think about that. So Christmas for me was usually like one or two main gifts, and then money to go. So we've talked about this before, but in Canada we have Boxing Day. Not to go off on a big tangent, but Boxing Day is kind of the equivalent of like a Black Friday or Cyber Monday, where all the sales are on a specific day. I mean, it makes sense for us to put it after Christmas because the stores are trying to clear out everything. So my Christmases were usually one or two bigger gifts and then money to go spend on Boxing Day. So I'm trying to think through because there wouldn't then have been a lot of gifts, but probably my better gifts or my most memorable gifts were a pair of Reebok pumps. I'm going to say that one. And it wasn't necessarily the best gift, like compared to all the other stuff out there, but I just remember like at that age, I was probably in grade 6 or something, playing basketball, and Reebok pumps had just come out, and they're a very novel thing because you could squeeze the tongue of your shoe and then give yourself a tighter feel or whatever. I think it took a few years for people to realize that that made zero difference whatsoever. But that's one of my most memorable gifts. How about you?
Okay, yeah. So the Reebok pumps. My biggest connection with that memory is Michael Chang. I played tennis in high school, and and I said I played tennis in rural Missouri, and so the level of competition that I faced, even being on varsity, was probably not what you face in the cities, because I see some of the I live in suburbs of St. Louis, and some of the kids that play in my area are crazy good. But anyway, Michael Chang on the ATP tour and his Reebok pumps is that's how I recall those shoes. I didn't ever get them, but I did have the Agassi AirTech Challenge Nike shoe, and that was one of the things that I bought for myself out of money I got from my parents. It wasn't for Christmas. My best Christmas gift would probably be a microscope I got. I wanted it so bad. And yes, I was a super nerd when I was a kid. I read encyclopedias when I was 5. And I was explaining a woman's gender to, my older brother one time when my mom came in, and just like, oh, maybe we put those things away. But yeah, so
awesome.
I really had my eyes on a microscope, and we lived in Italy at the time. My dad was military, and so we were on a military exchange over in Italy, and so getting things like that was more challenging. So I didn't really expect that I would get it, and then Christmas morning, we opened all the gifts, and there was it wasn't under the tree, and I was devastated. And my dad, quite the prankster, is like, oh, well, maybe, I don't remember exactly the conversation, but he had hidden that one away in the other room. And then I just, light up, and I was so excited to study all those microscopic organisms and and all that.
Yeah.
So that'd be mine.
Yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah.
I'll mention as well. I think we're going to have another show about this at some point, talking about early computers that we've owned. But one of my presents that I'd bought with the money that I'd gotten to buy on Boxing Day was actually my first computer, and so I had bought a 386 on Boxing Day. I remember having to go, similar to Black Friday, you have to go line up and get into the store, or get in line in front of the store really early, and so that was one of my holiday gifts, although I didn't receive it on Christmas.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. So let's dive in. Boo, what are we talking about today?
Yeah, we were going to talk about home labs today. I'm pretty excited about that because, or it's just on my mind lately, because I have been refreshing my home lab and just going through rebuilding stuff, and wanted to talk about, hey, what was what were our previous home labs looking like? How do we use them to learn? And how do we take care of software on them? And then, what can you accomplish with your home lab? So, do you want me to dive into some of this first?
Yeah, you jump in, and I'll add some color commentary, and then we can talk about things as we've gone over the years, and what a home lab looks like today.
Yeah, cool. So I don't have a specific picture on this, but I wish I did. Now, when I was going to school, I went to school for essentially network engineering. It was called the Network Specialist Program. And so we were just working on switches and routers. And so I remember like studying for my CCNA, CCNP, for those of you who are into the Cisco certifications. I just had a stack of Cisco routers and switches that I got off of eBay as well. So, going out and this was actually my first foray into maybe bots, if you want to think about it in that way, in that you could use an auction bot to go on eBay,
Oh,
and you could
yeah.
put in the price for what you wanted to bid for something on an auction without having to make that bid until the very last second of that auction. So it allowed you to not drive up the price and show interest for a particular auction. Anyways, they probably have that all figured out now. There's probably no way that you can get around whatever bot protection that they have. But this, in the early days, that was very possible. So I probably had about 4 or 5 2600 routers, with various WIC cards on there that I would also source from eBay, the cheapest that I could. And I recall maybe I can't remember the switches exactly. Probably something in the 2000 series, as far as Catalyst 2500 switches or so. Nothing in like the 3500 or 3700 series at that point. Nothing layer 3 at that point. All the layer 3 was done on those routers. But those were my earliest recollections of a lab that had to do with something that I could apply to work. How about you, Jason?
I don't know when you bought your lab, but I'm tripping a little bit because I remember selling my Cisco hardware lab in the 25s and 2600s, and a couple of them went to somebody in Canada, because
No
I
way.
remember dealing with the customs thing, and what a ridiculous pain it was to ship a box of something over to Canada. So I
That's
think I was probably
hilarious.
getting rid of those around 2002, 2003, somewhere in that range. But wouldn't it
Wow.
be trippy if you bought one of my Cisco switches or routers?
Yeah.
But yeah, similar story. I had I was background is network engineering. I went to school for aviation, and then as I was going through an internship with the U.S. government, I had a rotation down to the base network control center here in Belleville, Illinois, and it was like finding your first love, right? It's like, oh, I love this. This is so cool. And so got my hands on the Cisco command line, and then seeing that your packets are being sent all over the world in a matter of milliseconds, and it was like, this is super cool. And so that began my interest in following jobs to further and further my ability to learn more things. And I ended up at a startup that went under. And when the startup went under, all the lab gear, they're like, hey, anything you can carry, you can take home. And I was like, score. And so I got a bunch of Cisco routers and switches. I had there was a chassis that I just couldn't justify getting home, but it was something Cisco bought called a Sarent, and it was a Sonnet switch. So it was like a kind of down in layer 1, really. And I loved that box, but I just couldn't justify putting it in my basement. So I didn't take that one. But I also got like a Solaris Spark 5, or a Sun Spark 5 server running Solaris, and so lots and lots of Cisco stuff. And I had everything from Sonnet cards to frame relay cards, and I even had some FDDI as well. So all kinds of interfaces to study for all that stuff. So that was kind of my first foray into a home lab, and I didn't need a heater. Some people have space heaters in their basement. Did not need that at all. And the power bill was a little bit higher, and but yeah, that was kind of my first home lab. And ever since then, I've had a piece here or there that I keep laying around. When I joined F5, actually, they gave me a I don't know if it was a 3600 or 3900. Well, do I still have the chunks? Where is it? Oh, maybe I took the pieces. No, stand by. You say something.
Okay. While Jason is doing that, let me pull up a couple of the comments here. Rodolfo, home lab running has been moving from multiple switches and routers with PC clients to virtualized machines living inside a server. Rodolfo, I'd love to know. Oh, there we go. That's the 36 or 3900.
I'll tell you here in just a second.
3900.
3600. Yeah.
36.
So,
okay, nice.
Yep. Notice the little F5 bolts missing?
Yep.
That is right here. And that's going in a 3D printed on-air notifier I'm making so that my family knows when I'm live streaming. I got to fix something on my 3D printer to get the final print done, but I designed that in CAD, and that's going right into that with some like a Raspberry Pi Zero, which we'll talk about here in a little bit as we talk about our current lab stuff.
Yeah, that's cool. This note here from Rodolfo. Rodolfo, I'm actually interested to know if you took, for your routers, I was talking about this a little bit earlier, if you have those routers moved into GNS3 or what you might be doing to emulate those routers at this point. I haven't had to visit that lately, so I don't know, what the latest is for emulation of Cisco gear, but I'd be interested to know. Here, home lab is mainly sourced off of eBay, a local version of it, Merca Delivery. Okay, cool. Robin, I've gone back to bare metal home labs. Really enjoy the new 8 gig Raspberry Pi for running Kubernetes clusters. Tiny and quiet. Cool. Sebastian Maniak, one of our DevCentral MVPs, has been building a K3S cluster. So I think that's on the. Actually, I have a little thing on that I'll mention as well. Oh, there you go.
There's one of them I pulled out of the. I've got a few of these on my desk and on my other desk behind me. The Raspberry Pi 8 gig,
nice.
The RPI 4. So I pulled it out of power, so now it's not powered up anymore. But use it for all kinds of things like that, Robin. As well as there is an A10 Mini hyperdeck software that you can actually, without buying the Blackmagic hyperdeck, you can use it as a hyperdeck with software running from that, which is kind of cool.
This comment here, M700 Tinies. I'm not familiar with that one. Jason, do you know?
No.
Is that's must be some sort of NUC style server, I'm guessing?
Lenovo Think Center. Oh, like a little thin client.
Okay.
Tiny desktop. Okay. Oh yeah, so those are the kind of like desktops that are still well powered, but you can like mount behind your monitor, so that it's not taking up desk space. So
yeah,
that's cool.
Nice. Yeah, Pi and Elk. Elk is something that I want to get going in my home lab as well. And Rodolfo did answer on that. EVNG. Okay, I'm gonna check that out. That's a cool one. All right. So maybe from here, I'm gonna progress a little bit as in terms of my timeline. So going from that lab, um, use that to do a couple certifications and get things going. I was working at a partner at the time, actually, and so early in my career, and so we had lab gear as far as VMs and stuff. We had VMware infrastructure that we could run lab stuff. So I didn't really have to run that kind of stuff at home necessarily. Could VPN in. It was a little bit clunky and whatnot, but it was okay to run instead of having something at home. Moved to F5, and similar to you, Jason, the F well, actually not quite similar. I had a big IP, which I got in a roundabout way. Won't get into that story. But I was also given a ESX server. So I was given a Dell R710, and I still have that today. And at that time, F5, this was 2011, F5 had just started to be able to run on VMs. It wasn't official at that point. So
Right.
there was some tricks that you could do to get an ISO to run or to install inside of a VM. And so I started running that and running one ESX server. Still have that today. So I'll mention what that looks like. But that was, moving on to that to be able to run Windows servers, Active Directory, so that I could do things like LDAP queries, ADAP, or AD queries for authentication for things like APM. And that was kind of maybe version 2.0 of my lab. Anything you want to talk about for progression?
Yeah, for certain. The kind of the middle years, and really even to now, I'll say VMware has been a big part of that. I run VMware Fusion on my laptop. I run VMware Workstation on my development server behind me. A lot of when I was maintaining or developing on and maintaining the F5 SDK for Python, all of that development and testing was done on my Windows desktop, which is like Lenovo, with 32 gigs of RAM. And I had a version of Big IP running for all the supported versions. So like 11.6, 12.1, 13.1, 14.1, 15.1. At the time I was still maintaining it. And so in my Python IDE, I would be able to run a tox script that would then run all the tests through all of the versions of Big IP, so that I made sure that what we were building would work on all the supported versions. And so I could either run the script to start and stop each VM, which I had to do on my laptop because until recent, I didn't have. Actually, I don't even think on this one. I only have 16 gigs on my Mac. On the desktop, I have 32, so I could run enough Big IPs and my other stuff to test all that. I can't do it here, so on my Mac, I would run through one at a time. On the desktop, I could run them all concurrently and walk away, have a cup of coffee, and then tests were done in like 5-10 minutes.
Oh, nice.
So yeah,
Yeah, that's
VMware
cool.
VMware tools have been a part of that middle layer, and I know for the people that don't want to, pay for services in order it's not Infoblox. I don't know why I keep thinking Infoblox, but the Virtualbox. Virtualbox is one that I've used as well, and you get a lot of the same functionality with that than that with a VMware until you get to the really advanced stuff. But you can do all your port forwarding and all that for your command line or your web interfaces into your devices, and Virtualbox also integrates with HashiCorp's Packer and Vagrant pretty well, and so you can build your server images or whatever with Packer, and then spin them up as many as you need against that instance with Vagrant, and those integrations were really, really good for spinning up a Big IP through Virtualbox, and then being able to destroy it as soon as you were done with it. So you didn't have to necessarily maintain images like I do in VMware.
Yeah, that's cool. One comment here as well. Rodolfo running F5 Labs on ESXi 6.7 on a Dell R720. This is probably a good segue into sharing what I have in my lab. And so my current lab today, again, this is just going through a bit of a a refresh, not a refresh in terms of hardware though, but a refresh in terms of the software running on there. I have some stuff in the works that is on its way. Unfortunately, the chip shortage is doing its thing for arrival of that stuff that was ordered months ago. Anyways, I have Dell R710s, and so in 2011, this was the latest Dell server that was out there, and so I got one of them, and I got one additional one off of a coworker who was getting rid of his lab, and so I ended up with two Dell R710s. One of them has two CPUs, one of them has one. So I have 72 and a 36 gig um, build of them. I'm just going through a rebuild right now. So I might actually be able to consolidate down to the 72 because I'm not finding I'm running as many Windows servers or as complex of big IPs at this point. But those are the main boxes that run most of the services on there. Right now, I have a couple of Kubernetes worker nodes on there and control plane on there. Those are, I'm going through, and we'll talk about this on Tuesday, but, I'm going through the curriculum for the Kubernetes Certified Kubernetes Administrator exam. And so I'm be playing with Kubernetes on there. I have a standalone Docker host as well, just for playing with that. I have a box that's just, I call it the tool server, and that just has random stuff on there that I might need, and I don't have anywhere else to put it or nowhere proper to put it. And same with the Windows box. The Windows server is just, that's the only Windows machine in the whole house. It's a virtual machine. And just in case I need to run something that I need Windows for, that's on there. There's a big IP in there. Each of my kids, they haven't started using them yet, but I've created Ubuntu boxes for each of them, just in case they want to. I thought one exercise that they could have is actually learning some basic HTML. And so I gave them a little environment that they could play with that on. I haven't actually gotten them hooked into it yet, but I will be soon. I recently spun up a Minecraft server. And so the kids can actually play on there specifically. I'm going to make it externally available soon. As soon as I just kind of learn a little bit more about it, I just want to make sure it's secure and locked down for their own sake, so they don't have random people coming in destroying their Minecraft worlds. And I have a Plex server on there as well for watching media off of. So those are the ESX servers, and this is the home network. I have a Ubiquiti EdgeMax router, which I've had for many years at this point, and that thing is rock solid. Haven't had the need to go in and look at upgrading that whatsoever. I think I've had that for like 8 years at this point. Very, very powerful. A couple NASs, a Synology, and a QNAP. The QNAP is the bigger one. The Synology, it just kind of have for pictures and whatnot. But the QNAP was actually an iSCSI target for a while for my VMs. I don't use it as much anymore. I have a couple of SSDs in some of these ESX servers, so I try to keep the stuff to that. I do have a Pi running Companion. So for those of you who run Stream Deck, ATEM Mini, then you can use Companion to add on to that and have some extra functions on there. And then I use the Dyn service for DNS hosting, so I can have dynamic DNS and then have some host names for one of my domains I have pointed at the house. And this is all the physical stuff that I have. And I'll mention too, like at F5, we have lab environments. So I build this because I have something that can run all the time, and I can do whatever I want with this one. But over in F5 land, we have our own environments that we can run labs in as well. They're ephemeral, so you spin them up and they just die off after a certain amount of time. So that's there as well. So that's my current state. I have a bunch of to-dos on there as well that I'd like to get to at some point, but it's all on the list. How about you, Jason?
Yeah, I've got Pi-hole running. And one of the things I want to add is Octopi for my 3D printer, because, it's like for all of you out there who do any 3D printing, it's, you set it and you forget it and you come back like, 8 hours later and you have a part. But if you print overnight, You don't know that your print separated from the bed, or for whatever reason your print head has globbed, and so then you end up just with this massive mess of plastic. So the octopi or whatever will sit right next to it, and it'll watch your build, so you can either watch it, like check on it from your bed, or you can get notifications for hey, something went wrong, and so you can catch it quickly. So that's one of the things that I want to add. I would like to add a NAS. I don't have one right now, and so everybody's just kind of living off of the fear of hard disk failure. I do have some external drives, and I do some backups here for critical stuff from everybody's machines, but I would like to invest in that eventually. But the rest of it looks kind of similar. I do have ESX running on one of my boxes over there, and I've done some stuff with that, but I haven't fired it up for quite a while because most of the stuff I do, and we were going to talk about licensing, is for some of the stuff that you want to do, it's like I just don't have licenses for, and so that is the really great thing about having a cloud environment to jump into, is with our UDF deployments, to where all the licensing stuff is already taken care of me. Don't have to think about that. I don't have to go through the 80-step manual for all the 19 things that need to be integrated for me to test the one thing I really want to test. And so that is the huge benefit of these templated environments, that you can spin up, test your thing, spin down, all as well. UDF at within the F5 services is really awesome. I'll give a shout out to our partner, Worldwide Technologies. We've done some shows with them. They have a ton of labs, some F5 related, some not. As long as you join with your company email and go out there, then you can do all kinds of labs. And so they have some built-in labs for you to be able to spin up and tear down, learn all kinds of things, and you don't have to heat your house with a rack of Cisco gear, or just build out your own thing. I like building things. I like having stuff, but I also like the simplicity of being able to be testing something in 2 seconds and not having to think about licensing.
Absolutely. We should talk about agility while we're at it, and we're talking about UDF anyways as well. Like, agility is, we mentioned this UDF. If anybody has attended agility, or you would like to attend agility, this is F5's user conference, and I think the coolest thing about agility is the labs that we offer inside of there. They're built by the solutions engineering team at F5 for the most part, and so they feature real world use cases, and then they get turned into lab environments that are delivered through agility through the UDF platforms. You don't have to worry about the licensing or whatnot. You can run them inside of there. So you spend those days with agility running those labs, but then those labs are available outside of agility as well. So if you contact your local solutions engineer, they'll actually have the access to spin up most of these labs, not necessarily all of them, but most of these labs are available after the fact. And so you head over to Cloud Docs and you go over to the training, and all of these labs here, these come from the Agility Conference, and anybody can request from their solutions engineer, hey, I want to check out one of these labs. They will spin it up for you, give you a URL, and you'll be able to play in the lab for the day. So that is available for folks.
Yeah, and take advantage of that, because there's so much that you have access to that you don't have to, build yourself. And, because a lot of this stuff, you already know how to build to get it to where you need to start learning. So there's no sense in doing all that. This is, ready to go. You can dive into the skill you're actually trying to build, which is fantastic. All right, man. Well, we're close to time. I did have one other question for you. What are some of the things that are in your lab that have nothing to do with like necessarily job related things directly, but inform your job related tasks?
Yeah. It was an interesting exercise. I didn't really get into it because it's a little bit of a gray area, but the stuff that runs with my Plex, that was an interesting exercise in Docker containers, doing Docker Compose, playing with Docker files, running. I run something called Portainer instead of a full-blown container scheduler that allows you to up and down and monitor containers inside Docker containers specifically as well. So it's not work related, but I ended up learning a whole lot of stuff that was applicable to work through building out my media server and the Minecraft server as well. That's been fun
Yeah.
to play with. How about you?
Yeah. Well, I actually do some robotic stuff. I've mentored robotics for many years. I'm not actively like weekly mentoring, but I do some, indirect and, as requested mentoring. And so I have all kinds of stuff in my lab. I've got this Internet of Things kit that I got on on Amazon.
Oh, cool.
Bunch of, resistors and transistors and capacitors and like all kinds of different sensors. I've got these NeoPixel LED strips and Raspberry Pi Zeros, and I've got this little Cricket. In fact, for the kids in Australia, for the F5 kids, and then I guess for North America too, we ran a whole class for F5 employees' kids on building blocks based software to engage with something tangible, because like we build things and it's like, oh, click a button and then something happens, like with iRules or iControl or whatever, but when you're first getting in, having tangible things is really great. And so having something like this to where you can actually play music by touching these capacitive touch things, or kicking off a Night Industries 2000 little glowing red light going back and forth from what was that show, Knight Rider, and and all that kind of stuff. So being able to have things that keeps my curiosity high, and it keeps my troubleshooting skills I won't say they're high, but at least keeps me in the game for troubleshooting and knowing how to work through problems, because a lot of what we do is fairly well solved, and you just need to know how to work within it. If when you drive a car, it's amazing to me, having now mentored robotics for 4 or 5 years, that cars go 100,000 miles, because the amount of times in a single day, robots that these students spend months building, they break several times in the matter of a 3-hour competition. It's amazing that things that are designed that well to last that long. And granted, yes, they're $30,000, $40,000, but it gives me an appreciation of the quality of things like cars that are produced by industry, when you start small with little things, and you actually have to write pulse width modulation in your code, because that's not provided for you by a motor controller or whatever. You actually have to solder hardware together to be able to make sound happen. And it gives me an appreciation, but also it spurs on my curiosity.
Yeah, very cool. I can't imagine too, like, holding your breath when you say, okay, this is the final design, start making millions of these cars now.
Right.
And then, oh, there's a problem with one of these little parts of the design. All of a sudden, 1 million cars have to get recalled.
Yeah. Well, and John's not on the show today, but I have a great story that he shared with me, because I bought a Honda Odyssey recently, and I was asking him, we were looking at Honda Odysseys, and one of the ones that we were looking at had a built-in vacuum cleaner in the back. So you lift the trunk, and in the back there's a vacuum cleaner built in, and then you can straight up vacuum. You don't have to go find one at a gas station. You can just vacuum up the crumbs your kids are leaving all over the car, and that's pretty awesome. But he said that in the middle of the model year, the manufacturer of that vacuum cleaner couldn't deliver on the order, and so Honda had to make the decision, well, do we continue to release this particular model of the line, even though it won't have the part that is part of the marketed part, or do we just bump the year, and then in the next model year just won't have that feature? And I think that they ultimately decided, and John can correct me in the comments, but I think they ultimately decided to just bump the year. And so they started that model year a little bit early because it did not have the vacuum cleaner in it.
Oh, wow. That reminds me of, I think the recent Teslas, it's going about that some of them have the USB ports for charging, but don't actually have USB behind them because of chip shortage right now. So they're just shipping, although Tesla doesn't really have the notion of a model year. So, and they do things a bit weird sometimes. So they're just shipping things without USB and probably have to just go back in later when they have the parts.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're past. Before we wrap up here, though, I'm just going to have to call out Mr. Robin. You're going to have to come at me with some evidence, prosecutor, because I harshly disagree with that commentary. I think Ubuntu's awesome. All right, there we go, John. Yes, they bumped the year. So there we go. Confirmation. I remembered the story correctly from Mr. John. Well, that kind of wraps up what our labs look like. I'd love to hear people, after the show, drop comments in on YouTube or LinkedIn. And if you want to start a thread out on DevCentral, I'd love to see images of what your personal labs look like over the years if you have them. I was looking through
Let's
some
start
files
one with
yesterday. What's
Yep.
that?
Let's start one and I'll post a picture up of my lab. And then
cool. Yeah, and I would love to see. I've got some over the years. Even when John and I were deploying DevCentral into the cloud, I've got architecture diagrams from when we did that with Big IP. So that'll be a lot of fun. Okay, so what we have coming up on Tuesday, Boo, you kick us off with the Tuesday shows in December.
Yep, this will be a cool one. Like I said, I've been picking away at the Certified Kubernetes Administrator curriculum and going through that. Michael O'Leary is going to be the guest for At the Edge, and he is going to share his experience because he recently passed this exam, and I know a lot of people are looking at it right now. So I think this is going to be really helpful for folks to check out.
Nice, cool. And then John and I are back here next Thursday. And we're going to talk about the Quick protocol with Martin Duke, who is a developer within F5 working on protocol stacks. And so, if you're curious at all about why HTTP has jettisoned TCP as a transport, you'll want to dial in for that talk. And then John, a week from this coming Tuesday, is back with a real attack story. And those are so fascinating because you get to see, kind of the inner workings of what's going on in the SOC and how they find and identify attacks and then, mitigate them. So that'll be a lot of fun. 2 weeks from today, where are they now? We're going to talk to people who used to be F5 customers and or partners and transitioned into, F5 and kind of how that journey and experience has happened. And that's going to be an engaging talk about, career development and the milestones that you have along the way. And then I'm going to be back on the 21st. It might not be monitors. On Tuesday's show, we did an iRule rewrite live in VS Code from the code share. And there was enough interest there that I might shift and actually just do an iRules troubleshooting show on the 21st for the core. So that might change. I'm looking at, how much time I have between now and then to shift gears, but I might push monitors out to January. But anyway, that's what we have coming up. And everyone, this was a fantastic look at labs. I'm so glad that you could join us today. And Boo, have a great show on Tuesday.
Thanks. We'll see everybody then.
Bye, everyone.
Hey DevCentral community, we are down in my crawl space right now. By the time you're watching this, we would have already aired DevCentral Connects, What's Your Lab Look Like? And this is what my lab looks like. So there's a couple servers here, a NAS here, there's another NAS upstairs. These servers are running VMware ESX, and I've been a longtime user of VMware. Early in my career, I actually wrote the VMware Certified Professional exam because it was important to my job. I was a network engineer,
but it was important for me to know and understand VMware. I feel like we're at that same point with Kubernetes these days. So for edge architectures, a lot of that is actually based on Kubernetes. So it's important to know how to use Kubernetes. And an exam that you can take for that and study for is the Certified Kubernetes exam. Now, on Tuesdays at the Edge, 9:30 Pacific time, we'll have on Michael O'Leary, who recently passed the Certified Kubernetes Administrator exam. He's going to go over tips and tricks and what to expect on that exam. So I think it'll be a great episode to check out if you're looking at learning more about Kubernetes or looking to get certified on Kubernetes. So we'll see you there at the Edge, youtube.com/DevCentral, Tuesday, 9:30 Pacific.